This brief webinar reviews the Indiana IEP updates for August of 2020. We're going to review the release document, share resources for more information from the Office of Student Assessment, and walk through updates in Indiana IEP. But first, details around those changes to the system. First, WIDA domain exemptions. The IEP can indicate exemptions for the WIDA testing domains now. The WIDA accommodations are presented in one list rather than by domain, and those accommodations are not aligned to daily accommodations. The iRead3 options are visible in the IEP system through the student's 5th grade year. The questions have been updated, and a good cause exemption date field has been added. For the high school accommodation change, this addresses the move to the college entrance exam and provides assessment participation choices that reflect the change. For the text-to-speech and calculator options, the read aloud accommodation for text-to-speech and human reader has 2 new accommodations for all items, including items testing reading comprehension, which is a big shift from those that just not including the items for reading comprehension. And the calculator accommodation for online calculator and adaptive and/or handheld calculator has 2 new accommodations for all items. For more information and guidance on the text-to-speech and human reader accommodations, look at page 25 of the 2020-2021 Accessibility and Accommodations Guidance document. This can really help with defining some of the options that are available for students in those cases using those accommodations. And then let's take a short look at the IEP system and look at the new features at work. So here we're looking at an accommodations page for a 5th grader, and you can see for daily accommodations I've already selected use of calculator and directions and content read aloud to student text-to-speech. Their testing participation, they'll participate in the iLearn assessment. And for state assessment participation, we'll have with accommodations for a few areas so we can see some differentiation there. There's also WIDA participation with accommodations. And once we've made those distinctions there, again going through, we've identified our daily accommodations, chosen our participation level, and which assessments we'll be participating in with and without accommodations. Next, we review the assessment accommodations for the student, and we can see the new items here. The items for a calculator and for read aloud that were previously in the system are still there, so we can choose these items up here for calculator indicate for calculator allowed items. You're also going to notice for the text-to-speech, text read aloud to student accept items testing comprehension is still there for human reader and for computer platform. And then at the bottom of each section, you'll find the new accommodations we spoke about. Text is read aloud to the student by the human reader using reader's script for all items, or text is read aloud to the student via the online platform for all items, including reading comprehension. So that's a big distinction there. And finally, online calculator for all mathematics items, or adaptive and/or handheld calculator for all mathematics items. So, big thing to identify here is that these 4 appear for each area, and they're not tied to the daily accommodations yet. So you'll have to make those selections individually and be thoughtful as a case conference committee to make the selection that aligns to what the student's needs. And then if we carry on down the bottom of the page, you'll see the WIDA assessment options that appear. They're no longer broken up into separate domains. They're all one big list. And you'll notice at the bottom of the list the exemptions. So if a student will be exempt from the listening portion, then you can make sure that's indicated here. And once all this matches what's appropriate for that student, let me make some changes here so we can see that. We can click on Save and Continue, and it'll take us back to the main page, and we'll see that our daily accommodations are selected still, and then our assessment accommodations also appear. Now, one final change we'll touch on with this particular student are the iRead3 options. So it may look very similar to what we've seen in the past. However, just keep note that this is a 5th grade student, so those options, if they need to carry forward beyond 3rd grade, do appear for the student. You can indicate whether the student's taken or not taken the test. You can indicate they have taken this and the scores are not yet reported, or not passed, or has not passed. And then you can indicate if the student's been granted a good cause exemption, or if they'll follow the state and school policy regarding retention, remediation, and retake the IREAD 3 assessment. If a good cause exemption is indicated, then you have space now to indicate the date of that exemption. So that's really what you'll see for many students, grades 6 through 8, especially and younger in some cases, some of the options that you'll see for the accommodations page. The next step is to take a look at a high school student so you can get a look and feel for the changes in those cases. For a high school student, the beginning of the page looks very similar. We have the anticipated date of exit, the grade, daily accommodations for the student, and what you're going to see different are some new fields right here. And let me see if I can magnify that for us. So it's important that we read through these because this indicates what assessments the student's going to be taking in the future. So this has to do with indication of cohorts entered in 9th grade in a specific year, and whether the student will be participating in ISTEP retests or the student will participate in the college entrance examination for accountability. So it's important to read through that and select the right choice here in the next level where we indicate this participation in state testing. So when we go to this piece, you can see those options reflected here. So if the student's going to participate in the ISTEP retest and I Learn Biology and U.S. Government, if offered, we can indicate that choice. If they'll participate in the college entrance examination, then we can indicate that choice. So let me show you some difference here. If we choose this item for a student will participate in ISTEP retest, it looks very typical. The student, they're still going to indicate the student's participation level in math, English language arts, U.S. government, and biology. We also have some indications here where we can participate with or without accommodation, indicate that a student has participated or passed each one of these items. And one new thing here for the U.S. government is an option that said this assessment is not offered. And so that's a new indication for the U.S. government, which it might be useful. Or we can indicate participated. So that's what that looks like for a student in the first cohort participating in the ISTEP retest, ISTEP plus retest. The other option looks a little bit different, and for those students that will be participating in the college entrance examination, you can see there's a little bit, there's some language here that's important. Accommodations for that college entrance examination will be communicated to the appropriate assessment vendor based on the accommodations provided daily to the student for approval with parent consent. So that's an important distinction as we're moving on to those college entrance exams. Then we may have direct control over what accommodations are available on those assessments, so the daily accommodations will be shared with those vendors so they can indicate what accommodations are allowed on those assessments. So that's the big difference for the high school students as we're looking at going forward this school year, understanding what cohort the students enrolled in, and that'll tell us what assessment the student will be taking in the future, the ISTEP retake or retest, or the college entrance examination. So that's a key ingredient as we're moving forward through this process. And then finally on this page, specific to high school students, we have a pathways option. In this case, all we're indicating here is that the student may be participating, will not pursue a pathway with additional assessments, or will be participating in a pathway with additional assessments and may require accommodations for those assessments where allowable. Again, that when we get into the pathway conversation, that will be adding in other assessments and certifications where they're outside of the school and outside the state's control, so those accommodations will be set according to the IEP as permitted by the testing vendor. So those are all important things. So that's a walkthrough of the coming changes to the IEP system, some resources that may help with some defining some pieces and components within that, and then a brief walkthrough of the IEP system, looking at it from a fifth grader's point of view, so you can see the grades 6 through 8, what that's going to look like, and then the high school point of view where you can see the addition of the cohorts, options, and then the graduation pathways as well.